To remove the cable cover, first place the unit face down on a soft, flat surface. Loosen the Torx security screw if the customer has tightened the security screw. There are 2 locking latches on either side of the cable cover. To remove the cable cover, slide both latches toward the center into the unlocked position. Remove the cover from the unit. There are several small tabs on the top of the cable cover that fit into slots on the rear of the chassis. To replace the cable cover, align the tabs on the cover into their slots on the PC. Slide the locking latches back towards the sides of the unit to lock the cable cover in place. Tighten the Torx security screw if it was tightened at removal. To remove the stand, first remove the cable cover. Press up on the latch for the stand to release the stand. Pull the stand off of the unit. There are 2 tabs on the top edge of the stand that fit into slots on the rear of the PC. To replace the stand, align the tabs on the stand into their slots on the PC. Press the rest of the stand down until it audibly snaps into place. To remove the rear cover, first remove the cable cover and the stand. Grasp the cover in the indents near the rear I/O port areas first, and carefully pull up the cover around all the edges until the cover is released and can be pulled away from the unit. There are several slotted tabs around the inside perimeter of the rear cover that fit over small edges on the inside of the PC. To replace the rear cover, align the top slotted tabs on the cover near their PC tabs. Lay the cover down and press all around the edges until all the tabs have snapped into place. To remove the top vent assembly, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover. Detach the 5 Torx 15 screws securing the top vent assembly to the middle frame. Each screw location is indicated by a stencil of an arrow with no circles inside. Pry the top vent assembly off of the unit. There are 2 types of tabs on the top vent assembly that fit over a lip and into slots at the top of the PC. There are also 2 small holes near the side edges of the top vent assembly that fit over alignment pegs on the top of the unit. To replace the top vent assembly, align the holes of the top vent assembly over their pegs and press the assembly onto the unit until all of the tabs have snapped into place. Replace the 5 Torx 15 screws to secure the top vent assembly to the top of the PC. To remove either of the rubber feet, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover. Detach the 2 Torx 15 screws from the rubber foot you wish to remove. Slide the rubber foot straight up and remove it from the unit. The rubber feet are not interchangeable as they have screws in different locations. To replace a rubber foot, slide the rubber foot straight down into its cutout on the bottom middle frame. Secure the foot to the unit with its 2 Torx 15 screws. To remove the hard drive, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover. Press the drive retention latch towards the center of the unit and slide the drive up. Pull the drive partially out of the unit. Detach the connector from the hard drive to fully remove the hard drive from the unit. To install a new hard drive, remove the 4 shock-mounted Phillips No. 1 screws on the sides of the old drive and install them on the new hard drive. The 4 screws on the drive align into 4 slots on the drive cage on the PC. To replace the hard drive into the unit, first reattach the connector to the hard drive. Align the 4 drive screws into their slots on the cage and slide the drive down until secure. To remove the I/O module, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover. Detach the motherboard connector from the I/O module. Detach the 2 Torx 15 screws securing the module to the middle frame. Pull up on the edge of the board to release it, then pull the I/O module out of the unit. There are guides on the middle frame of the PC for the I/O module. To replace the module, align the module within its guides, pushing the ports on the module towards their port cutouts on the middle frame. Press down to snap the module over its standoffs on the middle frame. Secure the module to the middle frame with 2 Torx 15 screws. Replace the motherboard connector to the module. To remove the optical disk drive, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, and the hard drive. Press down on the green latch at the top of the optical drive, then slide the optical drive out the side of the PC. If replacing the optical drive, pull off the green latch from the old drive. The green drive release latch has 3 small pins that fit into small holes on the top edge of the optical drive. To install a new optical disk drive, align the pins of the green drive latch onto the holes of the new drive and snap into place. Align the optical drive into its bay with the green latch at the top of the drive and slide until the drive snaps into place. To remove the Motherboard EMI Shield, first remove the cable cover, the stand, and the rear cover. Remove the 4 Torx 15 screws that secure the EMI shield to the middle frame. Each screw location is indicated by a stencil of an arrow with no circles inside. Lift the motherboard EMI shield off of the unit. To replace the motherboard EMI shield, lay the shield back over the motherboard, aligning the screw holes on the shield with the screw holes on the middle frame. Secure the motherboard EMI shield to the unit with its 4 Torx 15 screws. To remove the M.2 SSD Module, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, and the Motherboard EMI Shield. Detach the Phillips No. 1 screw securing the M.2 module to the motherboard. The module will pop up. Pull the module from its motherboard socket. The M.2 module has a notch near one of the side edges that aligns over a key in its motherboard socket. To replace the M.2 SSD module, angle the module into its motherboard socket at a 30-degree angle, engaging the notch over its socket key, and press the module down. Hold it down while replacing the Phillips No. 1 screw. Note, if installing an Intel Optane M.2 module, make sure the system BIOS is correctly updated and configured before installing the module. To remove or replace system memory, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, and the Motherboard EMI Shield. Next, gently pull out on the retaining lever located on each side of the SO-DIMM. The module will pop up from its socket. Pull the module out of the socket. There is a small notch on one side of each SO-DIMM module that fits over a small tab on one side of each SO-DIMM socket. To replace an SO-DIMM, angle the module to about 30 degrees, engaging the notch into its socket tab. Press the module down into place until the retaining levers snap into position over the sides of the module. To remove the heatsink, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, and the Motherboard EMI Shield. Loosen the 4 captured Torx 15 screws securing the heatsink over the CPU. Stencils on the heatsink indicate the order in which the screws should be loosened. Remove the Torx 15 screw located at the radiator end of the heatsink. Carefully lift the heatsink out of the unit. Before replacing the heatsink, first clean off the thermal grease from the CPU. Clean the grease from the heatsink if you are not installing a new heatsink. Apply new thermal grease or thermal pad to the CPU. Carefully align the heatsink back into the unit, positioning it carefully above the CPU. Tighten the 4 captured Torx 15 screws for the heatsink over the CPU in the order indicated by the stencils on the module. Replace the Torx 15 screw near the radiator end of the module. To remove the VESA mount, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, and the Motherboard EMI Shield. Disconnect the I/O module motherboard connector from the motherboard if an I/O module is installed in the unit. Detach the other side of the connector from the module as well. Pull the I/O module cable out of the cable guide on the side of the bottom middle frame. Detach the 5 Torx 15 screws for the VESA mount in the order indicated by the stencils on the mount. Remove the VESA mount from the unit with the I/O module cable still routed in its cable guides. To replace the VESA mount, align the 5 screw holes on the mount with the screw holes on the middle frame. Secure the VESA mount with its 5 Torx 15 screws. If an I/O module is installed in the unit, place the connector into its cable guide on the side of the bottom middle frame. Reconnect the I/O module cable to the motherboard and to the module itself. To remove the system fan, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the Motherboard EMI Shield, and the VESA Mount. Disconnect the fan connector from the motherboard. Free the fan connector from its cable guide on the middle frame. Detach the 3 silver Torx 15 screws that secure the fan to the middle frame. Carefully pull the fan off of its standoffs and out of the unit. Before installing the system fan, make sure that the screw locations on the fan each have a rubber grommet installed. Install a new grommet into any location missing a grommet. To replace the system fan, align the grommeted holes on the fan back over the standoffs on the middle frame. Replace the 3 silver Torx 15 screws to secure the fan in the unit. Replace the fan connector into its cable guide on the middle frame. Replace the fan connector to the motherboard. To remove the DC in cable, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the Motherboard EMI Shield, and the VESA Mount. Detach the DC in cable from the motherboard. Pull the connector out of the metal cable guide on the middle frame. Detach the 2 silver Torx 15 screws that secure the connector to the middle frame. Remove the DC in cable from the unit. To replace the DC in cable, align the port of the connector into its cutout on the bottom middle frame. Secure the DC in cable to the middle frame with its 2 silver Torx 15 screws. Place the connector back into the cable guide on the middle frame. Reconnect the DC in cable to the motherboard. To remove the wireless antennas, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the Motherboard EMI Shield, and the top vent assembly. Peel back the tape covering the antenna connectors on the wireless LAN board. Detach the antennas from the wireless LAN board. Free the combined antenna cables from the cable guides above the motherboard. Carefully pull up on the main left antenna and peel off its copper tape. Free the auxiliary right antenna cable from the series of cable guides running along the top of the middle frame. Pull up on the edge of the auxiliary antenna and peel off its copper tape. Remove both antennas from the unit. Each of the wireless antennas has 2 notches cut on its edge that fit over small alignment pegs on the top of the middle frame. To install the wireless antennas, align the notches of the auxiliary antenna over its posts, then press the copper tape into place. Secure the auxiliary antenna into its cable guides along the top of the middle frame. Align the notches of the main antenna over its posts, and press its copper tape into place. Secure the combined connector into the cable guides above the motherboard. Reattach the antenna connectors to the board. Numbered labels on the antennas correspond to numbered ports on the board. Replace the tape covering the antenna connectors on the wireless LAN board. To remove the wireless LAN board, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, and the motherboard EMI shield. Carefully peel back the tape covering the antenna connectors on the board. Snap off the antenna connectors from the board. Detach the Phillips No. 1 screw securing the wireless LAN board to the motherboard. The board will pop up. Pull the board out of its motherboard socket. The wireless LAN board has a notch near one of the side edges that aligns over a key in its motherboard socket. To replace the wireless LAN board, angle the board into its motherboard socket at a 30-degree angle and press down. Hold it down while replacing the Phillips No. 1 screw. Reattach the antenna connectors to the board. Numbered labels on the antennas correspond to the numbered ports on the board. Replace the tape covering the antennas on the board. To remove the left middle band, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, and the top vent assembly. Detach the two remaining Torx 15 screws securing the left middle band to the middle frame. Pry the left middle band off of the unit. There is a small hole on the bottom and top corners of the left middle band that each fit over an alignment peg on the unit. To replace the left middle band, align the holes on the left middle band over their alignment pegs and snap the band into place. Replace the two Torx 15 screws to secure the left middle band to the PC. To remove the right middle band, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the hard drive, the optical drive, and the top vent assembly. Detach the four remaining Torx 15 screws securing the right middle band to the middle frame. Pry the right middle band off of the unit. There are four small holes on the right middle band that fit over alignment pegs on the unit. To replace the right middle band, align the holes on the band over their pegs and press and snap the band into place. Replace the 4 Torx 15 screws to secure the right middle band to the top of the PC. To remove the bottom middle frame, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the top vent assembly, the left middle band, the hard drive, the optical drive, the right middle band, the Motherboard EMI Shield, the VESA Mount, and each of the rubber feet. Remove the I/O module if present in the unit. Detach the 2 remaining Torx 15 screws securing the bottom middle frame to the PC. Pull out on the top center of the cover to disengage the top of the cover first, then pull and pry off the rest of the cover from the unit. There are several small tabs on the bottom middle frame that fit under hooked tabs on the unit. There are also holes on the side of the bottom middle frame that fit over alignment pegs on the unit. To replace the bottom middle frame, align the holes over their alignment pegs and press and snap the bottom of the cover into place. Make sure the top center part of the frame is correctly seated. Replace the 2 Torx 15 screws to secure the bottom middle frame to the PC. To remove these speakers, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the top vent assembly, the left middle band, the hard drive, the optical drive, the right middle band, the Motherboard EMI Shield, the VESA Mount, and each of the rubber feet. Remove the I/O module if present in the unit. Remove the bottom middle frame. Disconnect the combined speakers connector from the motherboard. Pull the combined connector out of the small metal cable guides on the middle frame near the bottom corner of the motherboard. Remove the 2 silver wide head Torx 15 screws securing each speaker to the unit. Carefully pull out one speaker, then disengage the speaker's interconnector from its cable guides along the bottom of the PC. Pull the second speaker off of its standoffs to fully remove the speakers from the unit. To replace the speakers, place one speaker onto its standoffs on the PC. Secure the speaker's interconnector into its cable guides along the bottom of the PC. Place the second speaker over its standoffs. Secure each speaker onto the PC with its 2 silver wide-head Torx 15 screws. Replace the speaker's motherboard connector into the cable guides near the bottom corner of the motherboard. replace the speaker's connector to the motherboard. To remove the webcam, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, and the top vent assembly. Detach the two Torx 15 screws securing the webcam bracket to the top of the PC. Partially remove the webcam bracket from the top of the unit. Detach the connector from the webcam to fully remove the webcam assembly from the unit. If replacing the webcam module, remove the tape covering the module. And carefully pry the module off of the bracket. There is a tiny hole on the webcam board that fits over an alignment pin on the webcam bracket. To install a new webcam board, place the adhesive side of the board on the bracket, aligning the hole over its pin. Replace the tape over the module and the bracket. The webcam bracket has two small holes that fit over two alignment pegs at the top of the unit. There is also a stencil of an arrow on the bracket that should point to the top of the unit when the webcam bracket is correctly installed. To replace the webcam assembly, first attach the webcam connector to the board. Align the bracket holes over its pegs and press the bracket into place. Secure the webcam bracket to the top of the unit with two Torx 15 screws. To remove the touch panel kit, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the top vent assembly, the left middle band, the hard drive, the optical drive, the right middle band, the Motherboard EMI Shield, the VESA Mount, and each of the rubber feet. Remove the I/O module if present in the unit. Remove the bottom middle frame, the speakers, and the system fan. Partially remove the webcam assembly. Detach the connector from the touch control board. Detach the backlight connector from the rear of the LCD panel. Detach the LVDS connector from the motherboard. Remove the 6 Torx 15 screws that secure the middle frame to the panel assembly. Each screw location is indicated by a stencil of an arrow with 3 circles inside, except for the screw located inside a cutout on the motherboard. There are hooked black tabs on the bottom, side, and top edges of the panel assembly that help secure the middle frame in place. Pry out on the black tabs and carefully lift the middle frame assembly off of the panel, feeding the LVDS connector down through its access hole. To install a new touch panel kit, remove the LVDS cable from the old panel and install it on the new panel. Install the new backlight cable onto the motherboard and secure it in its cable guides on the middle frame. Place the panel face down on a soft, flat surface. Carefully align the middle frame assembly over the panel. Feed the LVDS connector from the panel up through its access hole. Then place the middle frame down onto the panel assembly until the black tabs on the front bezel snap into place on the middle frame. Secure the middle frame to the panel assembly with the 6 Torx 15 screws in their stenciled locations. Reattach the LVDS cable to the motherboard. Connect the backlight connector to the panel. Replace the touch controller cable to the panel. Replace the webcam assembly at the top of the unit. To remove the CPU, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the motherboard EMI shield, and the heatsink. Press down to release the CPU load lever from its retention tab, and pull the load lever and load plate away from the socket. Identify pin 1 on the socket by the mark on the corner of the socket stencil. Line up the pin 1 corner of the Intel CPU removal replacement tool over the socket. Press down on the plunger of the removal tool to pick up the CPU from the socket and remove the tool and the CPU from the motherboard. To replace the CPU, first identify pin 1 position on the microprocessor by noting the yellow mark on the corner of the chip assembly. Make sure the Intel CPU staging tool side pins are set to the correct socket type for the CPU. For this unit, it is LGA1151. Place the CPU into the Intel CPU staging tool. When correctly inserted, the small notches on the side of the CPU should align over the side pins on the staging tool. Place the removal replacement tool over the stage, lining up the pin 1 triangles on each tool. Press down on the removal replacement tool to pick the CPU up from the stage. Align the removal replacement tool again to pin 1 on the motherboard CPU socket. Press the plunger on the removal replacement tool to release the CPU into the socket. Swing the load plate down. Lock the load lever under its retaining tab to secure the microprocessor into place. CMOS factory settings should be restored as a first step before replacing the system motherboard. To restore CMOS factory settings, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, and the motherboard EMI shield. Press the yellow CMOS button on the motherboard near the motherboard battery. CMOS factory settings are now reset. To remove the motherboard, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the motherboard EMI shield, the top vent assembly, and the left middle band. Remove system memory, the wireless LAN board, the M.2 SSD module if installed in the unit, the heatsink, and the CPU. When removing the CPU, install a socket cover on the load plate window before replacing the load plate over the socket. Detach all system connectors to the motherboard. Remove the 8 Torx 15 screws that secure the motherboard to the unit. Carefully remove the motherboard from the unit. Place the motherboard in an anti-static bag. To replace the motherboard, align the center I/O ports into their cutouts on the center bottom middle frame. Clear connectors out of the way as you place the motherboard down onto the middle frame. Replace the 8 Torx 15 screws to secure the motherboard to the middle frame. Reattach all system connectors to the board. To remove the LCD panel kit, first remove the cable cover, the stand, the rear cover, the top vent assembly, the left middle band, the hard drive, the optical drive, the right middle band, the Motherboard EMI Shield, the VESA Mount, and each of the rubber feet. Remove the I/O module if present in the unit. Remove the bottom middle frame and the speakers. Partially remove the webcam assembly. Detach the backlight connector from the rear of the LCD panel. Detach the LVDS connector from the motherboard. Remove the 6 Torx 15 screws that secure the middle frame to the panel assembly. Each screw location is indicated by a stencil of an arrow with 3 circles inside, except for the screw located inside a cutout on the motherboard. There are hooked black tabs on the bottom, side, and top edges of the front bezel that help secure the middle frame in place. Pry out on the black tabs and carefully lift the middle frame assembly off of the panel, feeding the LVDS connector down through its access hole. Pull the panel off of the front bezel. If you are installing a new LCD panel, remove the LVDS cable from the old panel and install it on the new panel. Install the new backlight cable onto the motherboard and secure it in its cable guides on the middle frame. Place the front bezel face down on a soft flat surface. Carefully place the LCD panel over the bezel face down. Carefully align the middle frame assembly over the panel. Feed the LVDS connector from the panel up through its access hole. Then place the middle frame down onto the panel assembly until the black tabs on the front bezel snap into place on the middle frame. Secure the middle frame to the panel assembly with the 6 Torx 15 screws. Replace the LVDS connector to the motherboard. Connect the backlight connector to the panel. Replace the webcam assembly at the top of the unit.